Hey everyone, what's up and welcome back to another video. Today I will be discussing all the books that I read in May. Before we get started, please remember to like the video, subscribe and comment down below how many books you read in May and which one was your favorite. And without any further ado, let's just jump right into the video. So the first thing I want to do is actually just look at Storygraph at my stats. I want to implement this each month at my wrap-ups because I find it very interesting to see all the graphs. So the first thing is, as you can see, I read 8 books this month and over 2,000 pages. Then the moods that I read often were adventurous, emotional, dark and mysterious. The pace that I followed was either slow, fast or medium. It was all in between, so each book had its own set of pace. I don't know, sometimes I read it in 2 days but it read slow for me. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone, but that's how I felt with some of the books. Then the page number, 5 books were over 300 pages and then 3 books were just under 100 pages. Do just read fiction, so that's never going to change. I don't delve into non-fiction books, it is just not my cup of tea. So the genres that I read was young adult, fantasy, science fiction, historical, thriller, romance, mystery, crime, and contemporary. Most of these consists in 2 or 3 books at a time. I'm not going to delve into each one of them, but that is just the genres they fall under. Tags I feel is important. I read 4 that were on my shelves and 1 that was on my Kindle TBR. The format, I read 5 in paperback or physical and I read 3 digitally. I hope that's correct. I think I remember that it is correct. The languages obviously is English. I didn't read an Afrikaans book this month. And then my average rating is 4.5. I had an amazing read this last month because most of the books were 5-star. So let's just delve into the books that I read. The first one I finished in May was Beginnings by Kelly Armstrong, and this is a novella about Clay and Elena's story, how they became to be Clay and Elena. And this is basically just the backstory of the Woman of the Otherworld, or the start of the series called Bitten. And in Bitten you follow Elena and how she refuses to go back to the pack, but we just get a glimpse of why she doesn't want to go back. And in Beginnings, Kelly Armstrong actually elaborates and shows how Clay actually betrayed Elena, even though, you know, she trusted him with her whole heart. She was willing to stand by him for years to come, and he was just like, you know, I'm gonna do this one thing that might upset you, but I feel he was rather selfish in that regard, but it is what it is. She is now what she is. And I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars merely because I knew the ending, I knew what was coming, but I just enjoyed the building of their relationship. There was also a nod to characters that aren't there anymore, which made me feel all happy. So I really enjoyed the short novella. Then the next book that I read and couldn't put down was Cruel Crown by Victoria Aveyard, and this is the novella before the Red Queen. I'm sure everyone knows this, but for those of you who don't, this is the first book, but not the first book. You get the Red Queen, but before the Red Queen, we have the Cruel Crown, where it explains the differences between those who have silver blood and those who have red blood. And in the first story, we follow a queen who has been going crazy all throughout her years. It's this weird thing. I don't know what the purpose of her story was, but we'll probably see. And then in the next one, we kind of find like the rise up to the silver people and the monarchy and everything. And I really enjoyed that part because it gave me rather dystopian feels to it, and I'm excited to dive into the rest of the series. And I gave this book 5 stars, and this is my favorite book of May. Then the next book I read was Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. This book is set way into the future. It's a dystopian novel about people who use virtual reality to escape their boring and very, I would say, dreary lives, because life is just bad on Earth. So they use the oasis that one of the characters created to escape their reality, and then the creator of this reality dies, and he has this whole scavenger hunt things sent out so that people can win money and also become like the next, I don't know, master of this game. And then we get our main character whose name is Wade, and he has been searching for these clues for like most of his years. He also has a very dark backstory of losing his parents and having a family that doesn't really care for him. So naturally he uses the oasis to escape, and that's how he finds his best friend as well as his love interest. The love interest was like, it wasn't the biggest part of the story, so I wasn't actually rooting for the two characters, but the storytelling was very intriguing. I just want you to know that if you hate pop culture references in books, this one is not for you. There's a lot of references to the 80s, and I was in over my head a lot of times. I was born in the 90s and I grew up with parents that were kind of like 80s teens, so naturally that was my reference and my framework. But I didn't watch a lot of 80s shows or movies. It was mostly the music. So when the music came, the music references came, I understood. But with the movies and the series, I was just like, okay, whatever. So yeah, there's a lot of references to that, but you do get used to it after a while. If you just skim over it, it's just going to be like, okay. It is essential to the clues that Wade and the characters get, so just be on the lookout for that. But I also gave this book 5 stars. It wasn't my favorite, but I did enjoy the dystopian elements to it. I did enjoy the action, the main character's witty banter towards people. He's just funny as hell. So I really enjoyed this book, and I see there's a second one, but I've heard people say they're not a big fan of the second one. Personally, I believe that this didn't need to continue, but yeah, I also want to see the show, but I also want to see the movie, but that's still up for debate. The next one was a heavy contester to be my favorite for last month. I also couldn't put this book down. It was so good. And it is 1,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray. This book follows Marguerite, and she has 2 scientific parents, and they have discovered a way to travel through dimensions. But the crux of the story is, if you travel to another dimension, you fall into yourself in that dimension, in their body. So, you know, it's not this whole thing where if you see yourself, you freak out and you're like, what is this? Do I have a doppelganger? Do I have an evil twin? Kind of. But anyway, so when they discover this, Marguerite's father suspiciously dies, and all clues point to one of their student trainers, or the one who trains under them, and his name's Paul Markov. And Marguerite and Theo, another student under her parents, decide to follow him using scraps and stuff that Theo has collected to make another Firebird so that they can follow Paul. And throughout the story, it just points towards various clues that makes Marguerite question whether Paul is actually guilty, and she starts to question her feelings for him, because with every jump she goes through to another dimension, she sees a part of Paul that she didn't know about. I really enjoyed this book. I also gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I couldn't put this book down. There were some elements to me that was obvious, and it's also very young adult, so you know, it's a given who she's going to end up with. But I really did enjoy this book. I enjoyed especially the Russian part dimension of this. She is, I think, a duchess or something in Russia, and she falls in love with her god, who is Paul. And just everything that happened in that part of the story, it made me fall in love with the story so much more. The first dimension they jumped in, and the last one was just, it was for me, but I really enjoyed the Russian one, and I gave this book 5 stars, like I said, and I'm ready to delve into the next 2 books. You can read this as a standalone. I feel like this is enough. You don't have to continue. I just would like to see how their story develops. Then the next book I read was also a buddy read with my best friend, and it is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I'm sure everyone knows what the story is about, but this book follows, what's her name? Alina. I was right. Okay. This is also from, I believe, from Russian folklore and stuff. And this follows Alina Starkov, and she and like her battalion are going through, what do they call it? The Void, I think. The Shadowfold. She and her platoon, people that she works for, they go through the Shadowfold, and this is this large strip of land where darkness reigns, and there are these creatures that prey on the people that go through this dark fold or the Shadowfold. And then something happens when they pass through the fold that, I don't know, raises question about Alina's life, essentially. And then she draws, obviously, the attention of the Darkling, who believes she is their savior for ridding the world of the Shadow Fold. And she is kind of like thrown into the elite club of the people so that she can train her powers and so that she can improve her abilities so that they can destroy the Shadow Fold. But not everything is as it seems in this world. So I really enjoyed this book. I felt like there could be more, but I did give it 4 stars merely because I feel like there is potential. The ending for me was also a bit like I felt like there could have been more. I don't know, but we'll see. We'll see how the second one goes because my friend and I are reading Siege and Storm next week, so hopefully it goes well. I think I spoiled the book for myself at some point. One of the people on Instagram put on a reel about Shadow and Bone, and I went into it and I was like, oh oh no. So anyway, that is my rant for that. Then the next 3 books are arcs I received, 2 from NetGalley and 1 from the author herself. The first one was What the River Knows by Isabel Bines. This is about a girl who's from Argentina and she is basically left to be raised by her aunt while her parents gallivant in Egypt and enjoy their life while she just wishes to be with them. Until one day that someone comes to her and they're like, oh, by the way, your parents are dead. And she decides to go to Egypt to find out what has happened to her. And then she meets this character whose name is Wit, and he's just the type of morally grey character that makes you question life itself. And she starts to gain feelings for him while also fighting her uncle because her uncle doesn't want her to be in Egypt. So he continues to push for her to go back to Argentina, and she is as strong-willed as can come, so she stays and she helps them find the tomb of Cleopatra. And there she discovers that not everyone she thought were guilty is guilty, and not everyone who she loves she can trust. I was going to give this book a 4 stars, but then the ending was just so out of the blue, and so it left me so shell-shocked for like 5 minutes that I decided I'm going to give this book a 5 stars. I just love this book. I'm hoping that the author brings out the second book very quickly. I thought it was going to be a standalone. It's not, but I really want to see how this book develops or how the series develops. Then the next book I read was My Lucky Star by Annie Amanda, and this is about a Turkish actor who goes to Napier to lay low for a while because his reputation just hit a dark spot. There's a photo that circulated where he pulled down his pants and mooned the paparazzi, but he didn't see another paparazzi on the other side, so they took a picture of his front. I don't know, it's a thing. So he goes to Napier and he meets Aria Dunn, who looks a lot like his ex-co-star who he had a thing for and with. And so this Turkish actor, whose name's Jem, he decides with his brother that they are going to use Aria because she's like the doppelganger of his ex-co-star, that they are going to make like a fake dating thing. But obviously Jem is in love with Aria because she is so much like his ex-co-star, but also not. It's like a big contrast between the two, and he falls hard for Aria because she is so different. And then they go to Istanbul because she has to. She's his girlfriend now. So it's a very straightforward friends to lovers fake dating trope story. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, and I think I would like to read more of Annie Amanda's books. And then the last book I read was Murder in Manhattan by Verity Bright. This is the 14th book in the Lady Eleanor Swift series, and as far as I know, it might be the last. In the story, we follow Lady Eleanor Swift, where she's in Manhattan and she's living the glamorous life. She's being invited to parties and she's just enjoying making new friends, as she always does, and making new enemies, apparently. One day when they come back from a party, her doorman is killed in a hit and run, and the police officer writes it off as a hit and run because what else can he do? The witnesses all say that it looks like the car tried to swerve out but accidentally hit the doorman. But something in Lady Eleanor, she's just like, something's off because it's the middle of summer and the driver was wearing a very thick coat, so that didn't make sense to her. So she starts investigating and is embroiled in this deep, dark side of Manhattan that everyone is trying to keep her away from, to keep her safe. But as headstrong as she is, she decides to plunge in headfirst, and then she comes face to face with the killer. And this leaves her life in danger as well. I also enjoyed this book. The previous book that Verity Bright wrote was, I think, Death on Deck, and I really enjoyed that book. I couldn't figure out who the killer was, but in this book, something was off for me from one of the characters, so I kept one eye on them just to make sure, and kind of figured out who the killer was. I didn't know the motive behind it, but I did figure out the killer. But I really did enjoy the book. It's a very nice, cozy mystery book if you want to just sit back and relax. Read a book for a day, read something that is not heavy on your mind, and I would definitely recommend this book. So that is going to be it for this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in a video next week. Bye!